What truly nourishes us? Beyond food and drink, our minds, bodies, and spirits thrive on virtues like compassion, integrity, and righteousness. In this episode, we'll uncover how living virtuously can transform your well being. Welcome to New Ashla. Hello and welcome to the New Ashla Podcast. Today we continue the series inspired by the book, The Light Within, A Journey Through the Axioms of Ashla. I am your host and author of the book, Justin Gates. Today I'm joined by co-host Michael and Heather.
Hello.
Hey, family.
The axiom of light that we are focusing on today is nourish the mind, body, and spirit with the substance of virtue and righteousness. Now, this axiom reminds us that a balanced and fulfilling life comes from feeding our whole being. We really try to be as holistic as possible because when you neglect one or two parts of the whole for too long, it can spell disharmony and disaster. When we talk about the axioms, we're talking about what a fulfilling life is for those who walk this path, those who walk similar paths. It comes from feeding our whole being with principles of virtue and righteousness. It is through this nourishment that we find harmony and purpose, especially in orders and temples like ours, where we deal with knighthood. This topic is really important for those who wish to take on that glorious burden, I would say. Knighthood is one of those things that it's pretty awesome, but it comes with its pitfalls and broken hearts.
Yeah.
We're gonna use the 12 agreements. The 12 agreements are something that I teach at the temple, and we'll get into those specifically here in a minute. But those are going to kind of be the heart of this discussion, because really they are the heart of knighthood as we teach it and as we practice it. So, but first we're going to start off with this holistic approach. We're going to go through that and define what that is when we say the holistic approach to knighthood, the holistic approach to this path, the holistic approach to life in general. Now, when we talk about the holistic approach, we're talking about the interconnectedness of our mind, our body, and spirit. And sometimes folks will say emotions, which I'm fine with that too. Your mind, your body, your emotions, and your spirit, because sometimes those really do feel like four different aspects of ourself, and how neglecting those creates imbalance. When we're talking about virtues, things like compassion, integrity, discipline, we talk about how those nourish the mind with wisdom, they nourish the body with strength, and they nourish the spirit with purpose.
You know, when we talk about how the spirit, mind, and body, I know that's something I've always been drawn to as far as an understanding of us as people. And recently I've learned of the study that's done with the mind-heart-gut connection.
Mm-hmm.
And when we live in alignment, there is harmony between these things. And when we are in disharmony, especially in our lives and our relationships, and the way we go through life, there is disharmony in any area. The gut is letting you know that something is amiss in your life. The heart is letting you know that there is a problem within your relationships. And the mind is the problem solver. And unfortunately, we rely so much on the mind when its goal is to solve problems, and many problems that are truly large in our lives cannot be analyzed and handled through an analytical lens. But that's one thing I wanted to add to what you were saying there, because it's so big nowadays. The research they're doing in the nervous system and how it's connected. I mean, we look at the chakras, and everyone's heard of chakras. It's in so many different cultures. Well, now they're seeing in science, your nervous system is directly correlated with these energy centers.
Mm-hmm.
And each of these chakras represents different areas in your life. You have the root, which is security, home, foundation. You have the sacral, which is the creativity and sexuality and expression. You have the solar plexus, which is drive and willpower. Heart, which is connection and reciprocity. The throat for communicating and expressing yourself. The third eye, which is for seeing things clearly and not chaotically. And then the crown, which is our connection to all things. And yeah, just ties right into the spirit, mind, body connection.
It really does. How we approach the role of knighthood in the world through this path, at the heart of that is our morals and ethics, our character. So that's why these agreements exist.
Completely agree. I mean, you look at, as we go over these agreements, you're going to see the duality in them because they're not only how to live a life that is virtuous, but it's how to be virtuous with yourself. You will see how these things not only tie into how you show up in the world, but how you show up for yourself.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you brought that up. Somewhere down the road, we will do a show where we talk about the agreements and the anti-agreements, those disharmonious aspects of each agreement. For example, with justice would be vengeance. And those are very important too, to understand that if you go too far good, too far bad, you're going to find problems. It's always best to kind of look at these things from a harmonious point of view. And yes, balance. Balance is important.
Right. Well, I mean, even then, as you go on this path, I don't care if you're spiritual or religious. I mean, what was the original sin? It was eating of the fruit and the knowledge of good and evil. The more we try to go through life with the lens of good and evil, the more we taint our perspective. And so harmony is the duality, the existence of both light and dark, of good and bad, of right and wrong.
Yes, the existence with each and not against each. So the 12 agreements, one of our temple's foundational principles consist of 12 agreements. And these are in no particular order because they all share equal importance. These agreements are responsibility, respect, family, patience, courage, justice, mercy, faith, hope, generosity, nobility, and grace. Now, we call them agreements instead of virtues. We call them agreements. And the reason for that is very simple. Knighthood in the modern days are not born. We call them luminari, by the way. So you may hear me say luminari instead of knight. It's just interchangeable for us. So I just want to get that out of the way too. Knights in the modern day are not born. They are forged. They embark on this path with an intended purpose, one by choice rather than a circumstance. They agree to live by these standards of behavior. They also agree to conduct themselves in ways that set them apart from others. If you do not place these expectations on yourself first, how can any of us ever expect others to do the same? How can we expect the world to be better? This is the example that is to be set by my luminari and knights throughout the world.
Well, and it comes back to one of the things we've brought up many times on this podcast. The role of a knight isn't to be a hero or to save the world. The role of a knight is to be an example, to be a role model for those who also seek to live a life more full of purpose and of honor. And when it comes to changing the world, the only way you can do it is by being a mirror in which people can see there is a path that is greater.
Yeah, because you're not going to be judged by the words of your mouth, but instead by the steps of your feet. Being that example is way more important than just talking about it all the time. I know that sounds kind of ironic coming from two guys that are doing a podcast. This is the only way we can share with you because most of you can't see us out in the world. So,
Right.
but it is much more important because you're going to be seen more than you're heard. So this behavior is what people are going to see first and remember the most. Now, before we get any further, I want to touch upon something. As we work towards building a stronger character, it's important to understand the difference in the language and meaning of some of the words that we're using here. Ethics comes from an outside source like codes and oaths and standards of conduct. This show about the agreements, those are more ethical in nature. Morals are more personal. They are principles for behavior based on the experiences and beliefs that you have or that you come with. Although the two are interchangeable and they do guide us to what we believe is quote unquote right and wrong, there is a difference in where we get them. A character, by my definition, is the sum of both ethics and morals that we find within a person's behavior and conduct. And again, both may coincide with one another, and they frequently do. People with solid morals are often drawn to places and things like this podcast and people with strong ethical points. But I want to clarify that we are providing an ethical stance when dealing with the world around us. And we're not necessarily directing or dictating a moral worldview. That part is really up to you to bring to this. So,
No, that's really well said, because when we go through this, you'll hear us, as you've heard so far, we're vulnerable and authentic when we present this information with you and we share our experiences and what we have learned. And you who's listening to this, you probably digest a lot of content around life and how to go about living a good life. And our goal is to help create a map. And it doesn't mean you have to follow the path we lay out, but to help give you direction and landmarks to help you navigate the path, which is figuring out how to live a good and just life. And it doesn't mean you have to follow the code to the T. These are standards to help you cultivate what is your character, what is your morals, what are your ethics.
now, students of mine and students on the path of Ashla, these agreements help shape the character of those. But these are for you too. If you never want to dive any deeper into the philosophy of Ashla or the path of the Luminari, that's perfectly okay, because these will still help you along the way. But these are important to us because they help incorporate our mind, our emotional selves, our body, and our soul. They encourage us to take the high road instead of the easy one. They bring us solace when chaos reigns all around us. They help us see the best in others when we may find it hard to do so. They help us bring peace and safety to others and ourselves. They help us grow our souls by pointing us in the direction of right action and devotion to our path. They also help us pick ourselves back up when we fall short and when we stumble and fall. The key here is to be as flexible and as honest with yourself as you can. Growing and changing is part of the process of betterment. If you find that you cannot incorporate one or more of these agreements, don't worry, because none of us can all the time perfectly. And also because everyone who has ever embarked on this path or similar paths, we all find difficulties along the way, I promise you. And I'm no exception to this. Stop, take time out, and breathe when these things happen. Also, make sure you do some introspection and find out where you're having a problem today. And then just promise yourself you're going to try to do better tomorrow. That's why there are agreements, because when we get up every day and we have to agree to do it. This isn't just something that we learn and we go, I've got it, I've mastered it, I am perfect. No, you're not. I'm not. She's not. He's not. And your goal should never be to be perfect anyway, because nothing grows in perfection.
Well, I think one of the hardest parts for people when they want to be on this journey, and this is the most humbling part of all of this, is, again, as I brought up, vulnerability. We must be able to take an honest moral inventory as we go through life, whether we're trying to shoulder the weight of the world on our shoulders, trying to change the world, whether we're trying to be a strong role model. Part of being a role model is being human and showing that side of you that is authentic, because part of authenticity isn't holding your pain in. It isn't trying to be stoic through everything. In fact, in a way, it's almost the opposite. The more we can be vulnerable, the more we can be honest about where we're at with ourselves and the people who matter in our lives, the more we will truly start cultivating an authentic character that is strong and that is noble. Because being noble isn't being this hero or martyr, it is showing that you are just like everyone else, and in turn, everyone is like you. And it's all about taking the steps to cultivate character within that vulnerability.
All right, so without further ado, let's move on to the agreements. The first agreement is responsibility. I like to think of this as kind of choices, 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 the weight of choice. Accepting accountability for actions and decisions, balancing duty and freedom in both our personal and outer life, the one we share with everyone else. I'll drop this question to one of you, both of you, whoever wants to get us kicked off here. When we talk about responsibility as an agreement, what kind of responsibilities weigh heaviest on us as we embark on this path?
Well, that's a good question. I
And
For
which
me, I think it's what we do feel responsible for. Do we have children? Do we have a life we want to lead that is virtuous? I mean, as we're going through this, how in alignment are we with our responsibilities and the things that we choose to be responsible for? Because that is the key thing, is what do we choose to be responsible for? And
What about those things we have no choice in? What if you are a father or a mother or a school teacher or a police officer or a person who serves the public? What if we don't really have a lot of choices? How do we how do we balance that with the path that we walk?
I mean, realistically, to that question, it's sadly it is a choice, and we see it everywhere when it comes to the choices people make. Kids growing without up without fathers, officers that do overextend their power. There's always a choice, but the choice to be responsible is to do what is right and not what is easy. And I think many people get lost in that because sometimes the right choice is humbling ourselves and looking at what is the ripple effect that will stem from my naivety or arrogance? What is the ripple effect that'll stem from my actions
Mhm.
onto others? And I think right there is at the heart of truly being responsible is we must comes back to that moral inventory. We must be aware of how our actions impact those around us and those things that we are responsible for. Because have no doubt, there is always a ripple effect.
And there is always a choice. I tried to you see what I tried to trick you there.
I felt that.
I know, and you handled it beautifully.
well, you got it better than I did because I would have fell for the trick. I
Well,
did not
that's
take it in that manner. I took it in a totally opposite direction and more of a personal way and not external.
well, no, but well, and you would have fallen for the trap because you are a responsible, caring, loving person, right? You would never abandon your kids. You would never mistreat your pets. You would never do anything that would kind of screw over your coworkers
No,
because you are a responsible person. That was kind of the trap I was laying to see, you know,
no,
because look, with every axiom, with every precept, with every good, fluffy, brightly shining thing, there's always the possibility for disharmony. There's always the possibility for abuse of those things, or even the antithesis of those things. Because again, we're talking about balance, harmony in everything we do. And for every virtue, there is an anti virtue. For every good person, they are not so good person.
Mhm.
Even within us, we struggle with these things. And we struggle mostly because they are a choice. Because what happens when our responsibilities conflict with our desires, right?
Yeah.
that's a hard one because even now I do that. I mean, you know how I am. I am more take care of this person, take care of that, take care of this. Oh, you're last. Because that's my responsibility goes further out to everybody else before it does myself.
Well, one of the more difficult parts, especially with what you're talking about, Heather, and it took everything I've been through the last couple of years to really start to accept this truth is every single one of us projects ourselves on the world. And it's a hard thing to really conceptualize. But when we look at other people, we see them through the lens of ourselves and our experiences. And so it's hard to really understand the true nature of anybody when that lens is up because we can't fathom what it would be like to not have that kind of moral standard. And I mean, we see it in movies. We know there is bad in the world, but when it comes to those relationships, those interactions, we give people the benefit of the doubt and we see them through the lens of seeing ourselves. Not that we ever think about it like that. That's what made it so hard for me is I realized there were people in my life that I kept seeing the light of myself within them when they were on a different path.
My issue with that, and I understand where you're coming from on that. I totally I see it, I hear it, and I understand it.
But
Think for me, because as you are, Michael, you like to help people all the time, okay? You're a helper, just as I am. We always want the best for each other. I see the best in other people and I help try and bring it out as best as possible because that's my job. That's what I'm here for.
Oh, man, you hit on the most beautiful point of this. So this is why we do this projection. And not everyone is gifted with this, but I realized when it came to people, that image I saw was the fact that I saw the potential. I'm a believer, and this is going to be very controversial. There are some bad people. For the most part, there are not bad people. There are good people
Who make bad choices.
who make bad choices.
Who aren't
Exactly.
very responsible.
And aren't very responsible. Hey, let's come back full circle right here. And what we do is we tend to constantly try to see this person as their potential. So when we have a relationship with anyone, we have a relationship with two people. Who that person actually is and who they are in our minds. And the closer we can bridge that gap, the more we can truly interact with reality as it is. And that's kind of a crazy way to say it because it doesn't impact us very often until we really run into those people who aren't really great people.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you find out when they really don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
Well, then what?
You gotta let them choose.
You got to let them go.
Yeah,
You got to let them go.
You let them do what they want. That's the cause and effect.
Yes.
Okay, that's your extra ripple right there.
And that's the hardest part right there because,
It is
man,
hard because you want the best for that person.
You do.
And you
and
can't.
you know they're capable of it.
Exactly.
But perhaps you are not the right oracle to bring that out. Perhaps
Yeah,
you're
I
not
mean-
the right teacher to teach that lesson, and you must let them go.
Yeah,
I
mean,
know it's hard. I really do. I get it. I have let go of people in my life in ways that I did not want to let them go, and I was forced to, just like everyone else.
a
And-
conversation Justin and I had recently just on this exact topic is the path of a knight is to have your heart broken 1,000 times.
Yes.
And there's so much truth to that because the difference between doing what is right and doing what is easy is when you see the potential of someone and you're constantly trying to throw them a rope, while you see them drowning, while you're constantly trying to help them achieve that potential that you know is there, that is not our responsibility. All we can do is be an example. And when people want to make changes in their life, to give them a helping hand up and help them on their path. But we cannot save people from their path because that inevitably is what does cause people to be stuck in their own hells. I mean, I'll be vulnerable here. One of my hardest lessons I've ever had to learn. I was with someone who developed a bad drug addiction. I was with her for 7 years, and I loved this girl to death. I saw all the potential in her. Everyone did, but I constantly kept trying to save her from the natural consequences of her actions. And after 7 years of doing this, of constantly trying to put a cushion under her butt every time she fell down, when I finally had to step away and remove myself because I had to take care of myself, she died 2 weeks later. And I have a lot of guilt over how much I kept enabling and to the point where when she finally had to face life, she was ill-equipped because I clipped her wings. You look at the butterfly, when a caterpillar goes into a cocoon, when it starts to come out, it breaks every bone in its body as it emerges as a butterfly. It is an excruciating process. But if you were to go help that butterfly out of the cocoon, it will never fly and it will die because it's through the breaking of those bones, breaking of those tendons or ligaments, whatever it is. I'm no insect person.
They actually kind of melt into a goo. So it's actually worse than the way you're describing it. So, yeah.
But that is necessary. That suffering, that pain, that hardship is necessary for them to thrive. And that's what enabling is. That's why enabling is something that is gaining more traction in mainstream, is because when we enable people and we save them from the consequences of their actions, they don't grow. They don't get the ability to show up for themselves and cultivate that character. That is not our responsibility.
It's not. And look, people who walk this path, people who are drawn to this path, we want to go out and save the world. But it's also important to remember that sometimes we must let things happen so that the world can be saved. We save the world by each and every one of us becoming better. You want to save the world, get better, work on betterment, and then help others around you work on betterment too. That is truly how the world will change and how the world will get quote unquote better. So, look, when it comes to responsibility, we all wear many different hats every day. I'm a father. I work a job as an admin these days. I'm a husband. I'm a friend. I'm a mentor, a teacher, and so many more things that I can't think of right now because I have tons and tons of hats. And and I take those hats off and put those hats on depending on what's happening in front of me. So it's important to understand the thing about responsibility is that responsibility is always a choice. Nobody's forced to be responsible, as you pointed out. I tried to lay that trap out for you and you just kicked it to the side so perfectly. Because it always is a choice. Choices, 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 right? So we have to remember that. And sometimes we're better than other days. Sometimes we're not so good. Sometimes we have to rededicate ourselves to those choices. Sometimes I'm a better friend than other days. Sometimes I'm a much better husband than other days. Sometimes I'm a much better everything than other days.
One other thing I really want to add to this conversation, because I imagine many of the listeners who are listening to this are people like Heather and I, where we are trying to do the best we can and trying to help people on this journey. And this ties back to what we were talking about earlier. The thing you need to be the most responsible for, I don't care how much weight you have on your shoulders, your first and most important responsibility is to yourself. And it doesn't mean to be selfish and egotistical, but one of the hardest lessons I had to learn with what I went through was I spent my life trying to be selfless, and that's noble, but that's not being responsible. Life is, but you have to be 52% selfish and 48% selfless. You must be responsible to yourself above all else, or you can't serve anybody.
Yep. All right. The next agreement is respect. Respect. This one can be hard sometimes.
It has been the last couple of days.
For you, yeah, you've had some great tests upon your respect, right? So, from the perspective of our teachings and our path, respect is basically honoring the sacred in all things, honoring the sacredness of everything the Force touches, everything, because remember, everything is connected. It's also recognizing the value in others, but also the self. We can never forget the self. Everything we say is both outside of us and inside of us. We like to focus on honing the inside out, because once you get it locked in, once you get it to at least to the point where you're practicing, it will start to shine through. We go about this by practicing empathy, by practicing setting and enforcing our boundaries and respecting the boundaries of others, and respecting the boundaries of nature, and respecting the boundaries of all things connected in the universe. And we also do this by honoring the differences that we find out in the universe. Although we are connected, we are also very different.
100%. I mean, respect is so important, but it's also so misconstrued. Many people, myself included, I've used respect as an excuse for lack of self-assertion. And again, sort of working on yourself first. You must heal yourself before you can heal the world. If you're struggling with mental health, if you're struggling spiritually, emotionally, in any aspect of your life, you must learn to give yourself the utmost respect. And that doesn't mean demanding of yourself all these things. It means accepting where you're at, your struggles, your hardships, your emotions. It's respecting who you are in this moment, whether you're able to give 10% or able to give 100%. And that's so imperative, because once you learn to respect yourself, that's when true respect trickles over. Again, we're becoming an example. And to conduct ourselves in a manner that is truly respectful doesn't just mean being kind and nice and smiling and nodding. There's a saying that I think everyone, myself included, gets wrong, and it's do unto others, treat everyone like your, your neighbor. Treat your neighbor as you would like to treat yourself. And I always took that as just do all you can for everyone and they will reciprocate that and they'll meet you. And I've come to realize the people in my life, I don't want them to smile and nod and tell me everything's okay. If I'm messing up, I want to be called out on it. But it took me getting to a place where I respected myself enough where I could get that input and not take it as criticism, but as something constructive. And it doesn't mean I have to take any type of these constructive criticisms to heart, but it does mean I can sit with it and not judge myself for it and decide if this is factual or not, true to my character or not. And I think that's a big part of respect, and many of us gets wrong. It's the political correctness that's in the world today. I'm not saying we should speak our minds and put people down when we have these adverse judgments, but it does mean holding each other accountable and being responsible with our words, because words are magic. We speak into existence things that impact everyone.
4 agreements.
Yep. Yep.
Not to be, confused with the 12 agreements. But that book, The 4 Agreements, being impeccable. Just because you must speak the truth doesn't mean you have to speak it with a sword.
Yes. Yeah. And sadly, some people aren't ready for the truth. That's one of the things you got to do, is have the high insight to know, is this someone who has enough responsibility and respect that they're going to take my words not as judgments and criticisms, but as love and care and wanting them to grow.
Well, I do have to say something though, because even as you're working on this one, you have to understand some people it may take them a little longer. Okay. They may be working on that. And all I can say is be kind with yourself at the same time. Everyone's trying to help you and you're trying to help yourself. But on some aspects, you may take it to heart, but you need to sit back and redirect that for yourself. I'm speaking from experience. It's one of the hardest things for me. If I'm being called out on my BS, and sometimes I do take it to heart, because that's what I used to do. Take it internally and try and work through it myself and close down.
Well, one thing I want to add to that is we have emotions, right? When we are told hard truths, emotions flare up.
Yes,
and it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel...
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, because sometimes I will lash out. I get mad. I get defensive.
She hits me with things, everybody.
Oh, stop. Never. But no, I tell you to have grace with yourself, just as I have to have grace with myself. Mm-hmm. It's a learning process. You'll get through it in your own time.
It's not a race.
Take it slowly, as fast or as slow as you need to. If people don't understand your pace, oh well.
So here's another interesting thing that maybe you guys didn't notice. We'll see. Is that every one of these agreements start mixing in with the other. Michael couldn't talk about respect without also talking about responsibility.
Oh, I know. Right? I knew they intertwined.
They do.
As even grace does.
They do.
So there's quite a few of them.
Right. What you said, Michael, brings me to one of my favorite quotes ever. And I've been using it for as long as I've been on this path. And it speaks to the impeccability of interacting with the people we love. It is one of the severest tests of friendship to tell your friend his faults. So to love a man that you cannot bear to see a stain upon him, and to speak painful truth through loving words. That is friendship.
Which is hard.
That is good.
That is a quote by Henry Ward Beecher. I love that quote. Go ahead.
It is a good one, but it's hard to do so as well, because for me, as a helper, I always catch myself, right? I want to bring out the best in somebody. I don't want to hurt their feelings. So I have to find the best way to say it without giving that sword, as you said.
I'm going to share some other quotes that you guys are probably going to think that I am completely influenced by Henry Ward Beecher, but he has some quotes that I always go to when I have trouble with some things. Hold yourself responsible for a higher standard than anyone expects of you. Never excuse yourself. There's like 3 or 4 axioms for that, right?
No.
$3 in the bucket right there.
Gratitude is the fairest blossom which springs from the soul. We talked about this on a couple different episodes. We never know the love of a parent till we become parents ourselves. The art of being happy lies in the power of extracting happiness from common things. Greatness lies not in being strong, but in the right use of strength. Several axioms for that, but
Well, those are good.
that kind of. But that quote about sharing our loving, not criticisms, but what's a better word for that?
Constructive criticism, feedback.
Feedback, or coaching, and those are fancy modern day buzzwords, but because we love someone so much that we cannot stand to see a stain upon them, that we speak truth through loving words. We don't just say, hey, you're being a bleepity 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 bleep and bleep you. No,
Yeah.
we find a better way to say, listen, what's going on with you? Because this is what I'm seeing. And it brings sorrow to me to see you acting this way. What's going on? Let me help you. I love you. Type things.
Well, this is part of that. Your heart breaks 1,000 times as a
It
night.
does.
I mean, because sometimes you will see people who are just completely self-destructing, people you love so wholeheartedly, and you watch their whole lives dissolve around them. And it's because they can't face these simple truths that you want to give. And it's not your place to make them see it. But there's nothing more heartbreaking than watching someone fall into darkness and not reach them with your love and authenticity.
Here's a bonus exercise for everyone. I do this from time to time, and the person sitting next to me may be like, what? Gratitude letters. You ever heard of those, Michael? Gratitude letters? Have you ever heard of those, Heather? It's writing a letter. Actually sitting down like old people with a pen and a paper, and you write out a letter from the tone of gratitude to a mentor, a peer, a mom, a dad, a brother, whatever. You never even have to send these letters. You write them so that you can bring forth that gratitude for them. Also, make sure you write one to yourself. Probably the most
True that.
important gratitude, that letter that you'll ever write, is the one to yourself. And that might be the hardest letter to write.
Yeah. If you're
It might-
surviving, though, you can be grateful for yourself.
You can. Well, you should, and you have to. You really have to. If you
Yes.
ever want to, if you gotta, I love myself very much because I'm grateful for all the things that we've gone through together. I'm grateful that we've survived 100% of all the bull crap we've been through. There's lots of reasons to be grateful for yourself. So it might be the hardest letter to write, but sit down with it. Even if it takes you a week to write it, I promise you, you will find a new way to look at yourself.
That's why journaling is so important. When you write things out, you ingrain it. That unconscious
you for
mind, that 85% of our thoughts, it's run through repetitive things we tell ourselves. And when we write things out, it helps slowly take away those mounds of crud we have built up over the years. The more we can give ourselves gratitude and appreciation, the more you will begin to build that relationship with yourself that is very much that. And it takes time. All this work, this is nothing that happens overnight or it's an aha moment. No, this is dedication and work that you slowly begin to change your mindset. And it all starts with yourself and your love for yourself. One thing I want to add to your exercises, I've never done gratitude letters like that before, but one practice I've had for years is every now and then I will pick one of my random friends and I will just write a message about what I think is great about them, what I appreciate about them, value they've added to my lives, and I'll send those text messages because I know it's going to help them have a better day and it's going to help them have something to reflect on as far as themselves, because unfortunately we are who we spend our time with, as we talked about in the last episode, and I've had a lot of people in my life who do struggle so much with self-love as I once did. And so those messages can truly brighten someone's day and even maybe save someone's life.
Absolutely.
I have to say, so back to criticism, even sending your letters or whatever. A lot of people come back and they take criticism as a negative.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, criticism even at work. Okay, let's use the work ethic here. Your boss comes to you and he's like, I've got some criticism about your job. This is how you're performing. You're gonna take that as a negative thing.
You can choose to.
Yes, but if you say, hey, I got some feedback about how we can improve
Right.
this, that, or the other,
Yeah.
okay, then it comes off in a different manner other than, well, no, this is
Right.
not what we do.
Yeah, you suck and you need to get better.
Exactly. So there's
Well,
always...
thanks for telling me after the whole year's gone through.
Yeah, exactly. It only took you a year to give me my review. But what I can say for everybody out there is think about when you're helping people, don't criticize what they're doing. Give them the constructive criticism, yes, but in a positive feedback, not so much of the negative. You can put some of the negative aspects in there, but in a positive light, and that actually helps.
Well,
It does for me.
well, it does for everyone. No one wants to hear how crappy they are,
No.
right? No one wants to hear the blunt, you can speak truth in many different ways. It's still true, no matter how you say it. The thing is that when you are going about, and this is why impeccability with our word, not only impeccability with our word, but impeccability with our reception of what's being said to us. It's our responsibility to choose how we receive things, but also how we give things. And when you choose to go with the blunt stick,
Hey, you're a pile of garbage.
right,
You need to fix this.
you're
that,
just
and the
creating
other.
more roadblocks in
Yeah.
your way to whatever. It's better. It may be harder to take the high road and swallow some of your pride and be more impeccable, because it often is. It is hard to be impeccable all the time, especially with people who don't really deserve our kindness. There are people out there that don't deserve it, are just nasty little pills. But but you have a choice in that, and that's why we say it's better to take the high road, because you bridge that gap from where you're at to where you're trying to get to in the long run better, easier, because you're not adding more roadblocks in between there. So let's talk about honoring the sacred in all things. Okay, this is the foundation of respect. Respect is the cornerstone of harmony in relationships. It's the cornerstone of harmony in communities. It's the cornerstone of relationships with ourselves. And we're not talking about just politeness, as Michael pointed out earlier. People just smiling and saying everything's fine, even though they're lying through their teeth. It's the recognition of worth and value in all things, in all people. To respect is to see the divine spark in others and honor the interconnectedness of existence. So I was talking to someone at work today, and I commented that, man, you seem really, really happy these days, because he had gotten married and his life, he looks way healthier. He's always way more cheerful and happy, and he's living a good life now. And we were kind of talking about that. He said, "Hey, thanks, this and that." I had said, "It's nice when you can have peace in your life. Peace goes a long way, right?" And he said, "It's actually not for me. It's not so much peace these days. It's the respect that I get at home. It's the respect that I get from my partner. It's the respect and recognition that I am important." So when we talk about the cornerstone of harmony, Michael, you think respect is, as I said, that cornerstone?
I think you might be on the money there. I think mutual respect, even in tough times, is truly a foundational pillar, at least, when it comes to strong, healthy relationships. I mean, I got to admit myself, I resonated so much with what you said there, because most of my relationships up until I started this path, we were partners and we would go through life and we'd put up with each other's crap. But it wasn't until I got in a relationship where there was true respect for one another, was there truly growth within the relationship, accountability, and man, it just creates so much flourishing.
So we talked about honoring the sacred in all things. We also kind of touched upon respect as recognition, right? Recognizing the inherent value in others, in nature, in ourselves, in all things. And when we do that, we really are acknowledging the unique contributions of literally everything to the symphony of this universe that we are a part of. We talked about the mirror effect. We talked about offering grace in conflict, offering grace in communication.
Yeah.
Before we move on from respect, let's talk about how do we deal with disrespect. Each and every one of us that I know for a fact that each of us have been in service oriented occupations. I was in law enforcement for a long time and different aspects of that. How do we deal with disrespect? How do we maintain grace? How do we maintain kindness when the people we're talking to absolutely do not deserve it?
This comes back to something you said earlier. Take the high road. I mean, sometimes you may have to confront someone if they are truly imposing on your boundaries and on your life, but sometimes some people don't want to take responsibility for their lives, for their actions, and for their behaviors. And there's a line you have to have with people where when you put boundaries up, and boundaries is probably actually the real answer in this, because within boundaries, that's the place where we hold people accountable. And boundaries are not for other people. The boundaries are with us. So when we put a boundary up with someone, it's if you do this, if you keep going down this path, then I can't have you in my life. But it is your boundary is for you and for you to uphold. So when they do cross that line, if they are in that place, then you're the one who has to take the high road and respect their decisions as well as your choice to remove yourself from it. Now, that's a bit of an extreme example, but that is the one of the most untalked about parts of boundaries, because when we have boundaries, it is to protect our peace. And that doesn't mean we will always be able to do that. It doesn't mean people we love won't at times push on those boundaries, but it is being responsible and being respectful for yourself. It is doing that for yourself first and allowing yourself to take that high road. And when we deal with people, someone cuts you off in traffic, this isn't what we're talking about, because that high road, it's up to you if you're going to let someone who's having a bad day, who's yelling at you that you don't know, if you're going to let that give you a bad day, then you need to look at it yourself a little more, because as much as that can be stressful, troubling, get those emotions fired up, you have no idea what's going on in that person's life. And it's easy to make those judgments. Yeah.
There you go. Empathy. Walking a mile in their shoes. Empathy was probably the biggest weapon I had in my career against people like this, because I'm here to tell you, no one wants to see the guy in uniform with a gun, no matter what's going on, most of the times. Most of the calls you go to, it's like they're glad you're there, but they hate that you exist. Because when you're there, it means somebody may have to go to jail. Somebody may have to face grave consequences. Empathy, empathy, empathy. Empathy makes verbal judo way easier because it allows you to connect to a person in a way that the uniform cuts you off from them, reminding them that you're a human being too, and you understand what it's like to go through a bunch of crap. Does it work every time? No, but you start with empathy. Also, because we talked about the mirror effect, do your best not to mirror the negative stuff that's happening right now, right? It's like we have something we call the force continuum, where you have step one is your presence. Do you look professional? Do you look like somebody who can handle business? Second one is your verbal commands, your verbiage, just in general. And typically you're trained to only escalate the continuum as they are. You always want to be a step above them so that you can always try to control whatever's happening, because your goal is to bring peace back to the environment that you're called to. So mirroring these negative things makes that much more difficult. If they're shouting at you and you start shouting at them, they're calling you a bunch of names and you're like, oh yeah, you know what? You're a bunch of blah, blah, blahs. Does not help ever. I've never seen it help, not once. And I've been to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls in 20 years.
Yeah.
So empathy, compassion, you do have to protect those boundaries though, as Michael said. Those are kind of the last resort. If you've tried diplomacy, you've tried your verbal judo, you've tried empathy, you've tried all these things, you've tried mirroring, bouncing back their negativity with, the silver lining type of stuff, then at the end of the day, you got to protect your boundaries. And that means get the hell out of here, or come with me, or whatever the case may be. Do you want to say something?
This kind of hits on my thing that happened today, because
Yeah, I'm over here shaking my head because I'm realizing what she's about to tell you about.
So I'm working 2 jobs. So I go to one and you work with that boss. And so, okay, you're focused on this job. only this job. Then you get hit up from this job. Well, at your first one, you're with a customer. So you want to remember it's best to have respect in that situation and not be on your phone and talking to anybody else one way or another. I got a text of answer me now. I need an answer. I need this. You are coming in. You are going to do this. And I ignored it because you just crossed my boundary.
Yeah.
You disrespected me.
Who are you talking to?
By telling what I was going to do.
I'm sorry. Who are you talking to?
Without actually asking. No, you don't.
Or just being generally respectful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I let this person sit for at least 4 hours before I responded. They did not like it. Is what it is, but you crossed my boundary. You disrespected me. I'm not playing.
There goes that Gen X thing again. It is what it is.
It is, though.
It is what it is.
You don't like it? There's the door.
There's absolutely. Absolutely. So in conclusion, when we talk about respect, we're talking about like a legacy of respect. Respect is both a gift and a discipline. It strengthens relationships with others and ourselves. It elevates our self-worth because we enforce our boundaries. We ask for respect, but when we don't get it, here are the walls, bro. And it helps create harmony within everything else within our sphere of influence. As you walk this path or paths that are similar, try to let respect be that guiding force that illuminates your interactions and your decisions and your choices. Try to always come from a respectful thing. If nothing else, I see the sacred spark that animates every person in front of me. If I have nothing else, at least I can honor that sacredness about them and then try to get through the good and the bad with them.
Sometimes you can't get through the good and the bad.
Then you walk away. You walk away.
No.
All right. The next agreement is family. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb.
I had that exact quote in my notes.
Of course you did, because it's so true. Listen, I love my family. I love my immediate family, my wife, my children, my mother, my father. I love my extended family, those of you who I know and those of you who I've met. Maybe I'll meet you all someday. That's a lot of people, but but the people closest to us, more often than not, are the people we spend the most time with, our coworkers. I spend more time in some weeks with my coworkers than I do my own family who live in my house. Those chosen friends, those chosen brothers, those chosen sisters, those comrades in arms, those teachers, those students, all these people that we choose to spend time with, choose to love, choose to not only be an influence to, but be influenced by. These are family. These are our shield brothers, our shield sisters. These are our mentors, our teachers, our students. I don't know if I explored this at all on the student and teacher show that we did, where you guys, all three of us kind of interviewed each other, which is up on the channel, by the way. If you haven't caught it, go listen to it next. I talked about my role as a teacher on this path. I look at my role as one of a more fatherly one. My fellow teachers on this path who are more motherly. And Michael and I talked about this off air. We talked about the difference between coaching, counseling, and teaching as it concerns this path. Because as a father, my job is to not only guide, but to protect. My job is to build a relationship with my students so they have space, the space to roam, the space to explore, the space to evaluate, the space to fall down and get back up.
Which you do beautifully, I might add.
Thank you.
Well, we've had plenty of children.
I've had lots of practice.
The patience you had in the beginning of my journey, like hashing the same problems as I keep trying to figure them out and no answers given because you don't like to give opinions, and help me come to my own conclusions in their own time.
But listen, each child is different. You have to learn how to deal with each child or each person separately.
Yeah, I believe it.
The other reason why I look at this path and the way that I teach it, and that I would hope all of my future students who become teachers teach it, is that you also have to develop a relationship where there is platonic love, where there's no nonsense. There's none of this getting biblically acquainted with one another. We cannot be doing that, right? so,
No.
so
That's a no-no.
so this is family. Everyone who is in my life, who I love, they're my family, both blood and water. They are my family. When you guys think of the word family, do you have a similar idea? Do you have a similar understanding of that?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I love is at the heart of the force of the universe of God. Love is at the heart of this philosophy and is to love our families, to love all people, despite. Because, again, no one is beyond redemption. But when it comes to family, yes, we have our immediate family, but it's those in our lives who have been with us through our battles, who have seen us transform. Family are those people who can give us that feedback, and we take it in, we respect what they have to say and digest it, and in turn they can hear our feedback, that they trust us enough that they'll be able to reflect as well. I mean, there are so many people in my life who I care deeply for, but those who I consider truly a part of my family, the love of family, is a small percentage of those people. And it's not because that these other people in my life aren't great, but it's because of the connection we have. It's because of the interactions we have, the time we spend together, and the conversations we have. I have friends that I do see all the time, but we talk more nostalgically and about the musings of life, next to, like with you, Justin, where we talk about the world and bringing balance and how to make it a better place. And there's a difference between those two, because family is that which you try to build, I think is the best way to say it.
Yeah. So we have a family as a foundation. We talked about this in the last episode about when we're talking about positive and negative influences. Our very first lessons in life, in trust, in love, resilience, for better or for worse, come from our families, whether they nurture or challenge us, which they do both. Most families do, one way or the other, both in very good ways and both in very bad ways. These relationships start to shape our character, as you spoke about with Derek on your show with Derek. You kind of talked about those first few years. It really does shape your character in a lot of ways because you are taught how to love, how to trust, how to be resilient, how to nurture, how to challenge. All these things come from that more blood family. I think for most of us, I'll just say that for most of us, probably the blood family. Some of us don't have blood family, and trust me, I get it. I lived with someone who didn't have that until she was almost 40 years old. Before we move into the chosen family, which is really what this agreement really talks about, because growth comes from our foundational family to a point.
Mhm.
Would you guys agree?
Yep.
To a point.
Yeah.
But then it's up to us to now choose more family, new family, to help us grow further and to help, and who we are going to help grow too. There's a quote by Richard Bach: "The bond that links your true family is not one of blood, but of respect and joy in each other's life." See, now we're dipping into another agreement we already talked about.
Yeah.
The role of chosen family, as it's intended of the teachings, is to understand that these are the people that you choose to help grow, but also grow you.
Yes.
It's
Well
probably why
said.
my circle is small, very small.
Quality over quantity.
Yes, my circle consists of maybe two.
Well, I think one of the important things you brought up here is in life we go through stages, through different transitions, through different growth, go through different elevations of lifestyle depending on the direction you go. And as you go through these transitions, sadly, there are people in your life that may still be a part of your life, but do not want to follow you on the journey you're on. I mean, again, I spent a huge portion of my adult life kind of messing around, just trying to get by, live in the moment. I had goals and aspirations, but no real direction to get me there. And I had a lot of friends in that same boat, and we're still really close. I love those guys to death. But as I'm moving into this new space, the people I'm now attracting into my life and in common communication with are people who are living the same dream I am. And I know as I transition from here, the same thing will happen. And many will follow with. But that is the path, is people will come and go in our lives, in our families. And it doesn't mean they're always gone. Sometimes people end up being like, you know what? This guy had the right idea. Let me try to jump on this wagon. But yeah.
Here's another bonus exercise. It's an interesting thing that I tried once, and it was really powerful for me. So I'm going to share it with you. It's called the family tree of growth. Draw a family tree like you would, like mom, dad, siblings, grandma, grandpa, whatever. Those kind of family trees. But you're going to include both biological and chosen family. Write one word next to each name that describes how they have shaped your life. When you start to plot this thing out, and then you kind of lean back and look at it as one whole thing, it'll really open your eyes to a lot of growth, we'll say, because of course there's struggles and there are successes. But and then and then once you've done that, right next to each name, how you've helped them grow, and then take a look back at it from a distance and see. And it really paints a very big picture, a very important picture in your life. And you can almost start to track and trace how these people helped you grow as you were growing and how you help them grow. So there's just like this mutual thing. I'll ask you guys this before we move on to patience. What is the most important function of the family you've chosen in your life? Well, chosen and biological family. What's the most important function in your life for them? Go ahead.
Community.
Elaborate.
So it's the ability to be there for one another in times of darkness, but also to hold one another accountable. It is the ability to talk to one another when things are difficult, and community is the glue that holds connection together. Through community, we don't carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, but instead allow each person to carry their own part of that community to help create something greater than ourselves.
It's also a conscious realization of the interconnectedness of everything in this universe. Humans are good solo, but they are best when they're with others.
I have to agree with that.
When I think that's one of the reasons we see so much chaos in the world today is I've talked about this in so many podcasts about how so many people live in their heads, and when we can't talk about our struggles, when we can't talk about our hardships, when we can't talk about our successes, we internalize and we judge ourselves. And with community, with family, we're able to have people that can give us that attaboy when we need it, or also just be that shoulder to cry on. And the more we begin to rely on our communities for that, the greater we can grow and feel not only validated, but feel accepted for being the flawed humans we are. And when we say flawed humans, it's not a negative thing. It's the raw aspect of we are not perfect. And through that imperfection, that is where the beauty of mankind lies. And when we have people who can witness that, the raw nature of who we are, we can find so much love and abundance because we are loved and accepted for who we are, shortcomings and all.
Family, chosen, and both an anchor and a guiding light. And whether it's through blood or choice, it offers us opportunities to practice patience, forgiveness, and unconditional love. And if we honor these bonds with our hearts, we deepen our connection to the light. We deepen our connection to each other. We honor the truth of the universe. We strengthen the web of relationships that sustain us. No man is an island, right?
Yeah.
Not for long,
Well said.
anyway. Because if you're on an island by yourself, you start talking to what was it, a soccer ball or a
It was a
volleyball?
volleyball. I don't know how many will get that one, but
I know. I got to start having Annabella telling me some more current things so I don't sound like a super old dude. Any final thoughts on family?
with my past, I have learned how to be passive on so many things and not really have those bonds with other people and open up and show those emotions and communicate openly, because that was just too much. You're impeding. You're impeding on my personal space, my peace, the whole aspect of everything. So for me, this has been one of my hardest ones to open up in that way, because it's hard. It wasn't until like just not too long ago that I started working through all my past stuff to even be able to open up, which I have been a lot better.
Yeah.
I feel I have been a
You
lot
have
better.
tons
It
better.
has actually helped us in multiple ways.
Sure.
Because my communication was never as open, because I wasn't always allowed to communicate. Not in this
I
relationship,
understood.
but in past relationships or past family situations. This is still one I work on.
Well, I think you brought up a really good point here, and I don't know how I didn't even think to touch on this. Authenticity is not something that's as easy as said and done when we show ourselves in the world. But when it comes to the people you love, to those people who are family, those are the people you can be the most authentic with.
Or you should be able to, right?
You
Yeah,
should be.
that's the
Yeah.
truth, though, because it is something that is learned. I know I struggled with it. Sounds like it's exactly what you were describing, Heather. And I think that's where so many people get relationships wrong. We spend so much of our time not even realizing it, but we parade around in masks to try to fit into the social norm, to get respect, to be appreciated, to fit into society. And too often do we get so identified with these masks that we lose track of who we really are. And so when we can show up, when we start to become authentic, vulnerable, when we start removing and those cracks start showing up in our mask, because that's what happens on this path. The more you do this path, the more you will find authenticity, but the more you're going to lose who you were when you started. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because that's just going to be the falsities. That's going to be
taking out the trash.
Your ego falling away, because that's what the ego does. It cares about your survival, so it's going to do all it can to help you go through life and be accepted and have your needs met. And as you learn to do that for yourself, and as you learn to show weakness to those you trust with all your heart, the more authentically you're going to learn to flourish within these relationships.
You don't have to be accepted by other people. You need to accept yourself first.
Yes, and that's the
So
key.
it doesn't matter what somebody else thinks of you, how they feel of you, or any of that. So I have been learning,
Well, what you said,
because I am a people pleaser.
you were a people pleaser.
I was. Yeah, I was. Yes.
I was a people pleaser.
I was.
There you go. And I just say that because you're not as much. Acknowledge the progress.
Yeah.
Before we move on, what you said, Michael, brings me back to what I was saying, was that the foundational family stuff, it takes us to a point, and our chosen family, and sometimes our blood family help us with this too, but for most of us, I think it's that chosen family that now grows us beyond those things and helps us shed a lot of that. So well done.
Thank you.
The last and final agreement we're going to talk about today, this topic is probably going to be a 3-part episode, because there's just so much to talk about for us. And we want to make sure we do you folks out there a service and really kind of help flesh this stuff out. The last one we're going to talk about today is patience, embracing time's lessons. So the core principle of patience, as our agreement, as per the teachings, is really finding peace in waiting, but most importantly, trusting the process. Patience also as a tool for mindfulness and mastering our emotional states. When we talk about patience as one of our agreements, what do you guys get from that?
Patience is probably the hardest lesson that I am still learning. Patience is one of the most necessary things on this path, because when we try to rush things, when we try to find that quick fix, that magic pill, that easy solution, we often falter, fail, and fall on our faces. And it's because true values, true character is built, and it's not something that is just there. We must constantly practice these things. We must constantly have patience with ourselves. And that's one of the hardest areas, is because we know who we want to be. We know what we want to stand for. We know the values we want to embody. But without patience, we will never cultivate those things, because it truly takes time and practice to cultivate these skills. Often, when you are on the healing journey, you're developing new parts of your personality. And I always reference it as you're almost an infant and you must learn to crawl, learn to walk. Then you can start figuring out how to run. But these muscles have never been used before. So give yourself a break when you're not benching 100 pounds. 500 pounds. Like one of my favorite Stoic quotes: no great thing is created suddenly, any more than a branch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer you there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen.
There's at least 4 axioms for that.
My
Yeah.
jar is full at this point.
Very good quote. And it's really one of the pillars of our path: patience, progression in steps, not leaps and bounds. Because when you don't take your time, when you're not patient, you miss things. You miss fundamental things. Let's go back to 7 or so years ago when I first met Michael. And we've talked about this on the show, where I would have discussions with Michael loosely about the path of Ashla, a little bit about philosophy, some stuff in more of the, what's the genre I'm thinking of? The more motivational type area where the guy's speaking, like a Tony Robbins type stuff,
Yeah.
right? But Michael skipped lots of steps. And
Looking for that quick fix.
right, Michael, as most of us, me too, I found myself very early on being inspired by so many different things that I would just jump into it, get bored with the beginning, go right to the middle, take out what I thought was useful, throw the rest away. Well, over time, you build up a lot of garbage. You really do. You build
Yeah.
up a lot, and you have to take out the trash. When you start to go back through foundationally, you have to go slow, and you have to make sure that your steps are measured and that you give yourself patience and you give yourself grace, because you're going to find a lot of garbage that you acquired. And it's not that you can't go back to that stuff later, but because you build yourself foundationally with patience and grace, then you can now reintroduce yourself to this other stuff, and it's much more impactful. I'll give you a perfect example. Over the last 2 years, when Michael speaks about these things that he was so infatuated with before, he speaks about them from a place of wisdom instead of a place of impetuousness, right? Does that make sense? Am I kind of gauging that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's when you first start getting into hearing philosophy and spirituality, you're digesting, and it's just like, I want to figure all this stuff out now. And when you're doing that, you don't realize everything that it takes to actually have it. To know something is good, to do something is God. Because you can have all the answers. The answers are not going to do you any good, nor is it going to help you in your representation of yourself. Because it's only through taking these things you learn and slowly cultivating it into your character and developing the disciplines necessary to follow what you understand can you live a life that is in alignment with this wisdom, because that's when it becomes wisdom. Otherwise, it's just knowledge.
Character does not take long to build, but it takes a lifetime to grow, polish. So it must be through measured steps. I'm gonna throw a question to you guys, and then I'll tell you mine. What kind of situations tests your patience the most? What kind of things are really your pet peeve? What kinds of things really test you and your patience the most?
Watching other people make the same mistakes I've made.
Well, buckle up, sunshine, because when you become a teacher, you're going to see that a lot, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing when you see that in others, and you're going to see it a lot as a teacher, because, well, we tend to gravitate towards those we can really have the most impact on, and they're going to be just like you, and it's going to annoy you to no
No.
end. What about you, Heather?
Are not listening when I say something. And I know that's one of yours as well.
Like, for example,
Just even little things. You know, it could be like when you tell your kid to change your laundry, or when you say pick up your clothes off the floor.
she'll never listen to this. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, I'm never listening to this. It's even just like, oh goodness gracious.
What about people who go out of their way and bother you? Because I know this is one of yours, and I'm going to kind of
And it's one of yours as
I'm
well.
going to kind of pull this out of you. When people go out of their way
Mhm.
to pin you down to get your advice, but then not follow a single word of it.
I understand. I get
It's me
it.
too.
I get it. No, just kidding.
No,
No,
because this happens to you a lot.
it does happen to me.
You
a
talk
lot.
to 2 or 3 different people
so
a lot,
many people.
kind of the same things.
And I
But you do have patience for them, even though you may not want to.
But see, I have more patience for them than I have for myself in that aspect.
You don't take your own advice?
I know I speak for myself to other people, but like I said in another show, we project what we are trying to help other people with, but we are also telling ourselves the same thing. It is still a tough one for me.
Oh, you hit a good point
I have
there.
more patience for people than I have for myself, because like when you have a lesson, right? Like you were saying, you have this lesson and you want to get to the end of the lesson already. You want to bypass everything. And I've said it multiple times to Justin in the past. Why can't I just know what the heck I'm supposed to be doing? Let me know now. Why am I here? What is my sole purpose of being here? Well, you got to figure it out. You got to have patience with yourself, learn the lesson throughout the whole thing. Don't try and jump.
My greatest stress upon my patience is probably 2 things. Hypocrites. I have trouble with that. I have trouble with hypocrisy so bad. Like, I really have to.
That's a trigger for me. I get that.
I have to really put myself on a leash and chain myself to the strongest tree, because I just really want to snatch them up and shake them and say, stop it. The other one is people who are trying to bully or intimidate others. Heather has seen me out in public when I'm witnessing something happening and nobody's standing up for a person. Like, for example, we were eating breakfast one day at a restaurant, and someone behind me, 2 or 3 seats behind us, was just tearing this waitress down. I mean, down to her bones. And I'm waiting for someone whose job it is first before mine, to stand up and say, knock it off. Like a manager or a coworker or somebody that is one of her people. And I let it go for about 40 seconds or a minute. And I Hulk smashed my table so that everybody got my attention. So I got everybody's attention. And then I stood up and I made a beeline for that. And I humbled them, we'll say, in front of a full restaurant on a Sunday morning. So,
You know, and that's the thing in that kind of industry. And I speak from experience. There's nobody to have your back. Nobody stands up for you. You stand there and you have to take that crap. And that's when you are setting your boundaries, because now you're responsible, right? You have to set the tone for how you're going to deal with that respect.
Well, but
disrespect.
Sometimes we need to stand up for others and their boundaries. We need to help them enforce those.
Absolutely. And I do that. Even when I play the managerial role, I will stand up for my crew. But you don't see that very often.
No. Well, if I'm eating there, I got your back.
And bullying, I have to say, I agree with you 100%. We went here's an example. We went to the movies.
No, do not tell them about this. No, go ahead. I'm just kidding.
I will not use the verbiage.
Well, you can. I'll just edit it out anyway.
I'll be polite.
Okay.
We went to the movies. We went to go see something. It was Justin, his mom, and 3 of our girls. Okay. 2 of which are in a relationship with the same sex. Okay. There was 2 guys. Was it 2 or 3?
2.
2 sitting behind 2 of the girls that were kicking the seat, calling them derogatory names.
C word.
Yep. And all throughout the movie, and being rude and disrespectful.
Now, I want to point out before you go any further, because people are going to say, well, I just heard you stand up for someone you didn't know at a restaurant. I want you guys to understand, I had no idea this was going on. It was a dark theater, and they didn't say anything to me, and I was at the very end of the row.
Yes.
Okay, because there was literally like 6 or 7 of us there. Go ahead.
Movie's over. We all get up, and the guys are still talking smack to the girls. We end up going outside.
They're waiting for them outside.
Yes. boys have walked outside. We are walking out, and they are proceeding to call them this word.
Now, I don't believe that those boys knew that you and I
Were with
were
them.
with them.
I don't believe so
Okay,
either.
go ahead.
I heard them say this to the girls, and Justin heard them, and he turned around and
I was in the middle of the street.
Yep, he was in the middle about crossing the road. And he heard it, turned around, started walking back, and before he could get there, I was in front of them defending my girls. And I went mama bear on these boys. They never saw it coming. Everybody ended up taking a step back, and they're like, nope.
It scared them more than the nearly 6 foot, 250
Mhm.
pound man
Yes, it did.
that was coming at them with ill intent.
Yes, I don't stand for bullying either,
No.
especially in that way as well. I don't care what race you are, what gender you are, who you're with, what sex you're with. I don't care. I will stand up for you because I don't deal with that.
Yeah.
So patience is the quiet strength that allows us to endure challenges. It allows us to endure mysteries, uncover things, to navigate uncertainty, and it gives us the power to quietly wait for clarity to emerge in a situation or a relationship or whatever we're dealing with. It is not, I want you guys to understand, it's not passive. Patience is not passive. It is an active, deliberate practice of trust, of restraint, and of presence. It is essential for growth, as we've just illustrated. It teaches us to harmonize with the rhythm of life rather than to constantly try to control it or block it or whatever we're doing. Patience is not a weakness. It's mastery. It's a conscious mastery over impulses and reactions. Patience has a lot to do with self-discipline, as does responsibility, as does respect.
Yep.
I have my own Stoic quote that I'm going to share. It's by Aristotle. Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. It is.
That's good. That's
It is
good.
Aristotle knew his stuff. He's not my favorite, but he knew his stuff. So think of patience, and let's compare it to things in nature. Trees that require decades to grow to a point where you notice change. Rivers carving out valleys and carving canyons and all these massive things over millennia. The universe and life unfolds at its own pace. It does.
Yeah. Patience is the most important skill you can cultivate. Again, so many people out there, myself included, we're always looking for that quick fix, that magic pill, that easy way to get everything we want. And through that is the downfall of so many people's lives. Patience is what really helps you cultivate the greatest harvest, because with patience and diligence, you can grow, you can expand, and you can become more if you would just give yourself the time you needed to develop these things and these systems.
I have some strategies that I do, and I think sometimes this annoys people, but it's one of my quirks. I use moments of waiting where I have to wait in line. If I'm at the DMV, or if I'm waiting for my food at a restaurant, if I'm sitting in traffic, I turn all of those moments into moments of introspection. I do a lot of inner work every day, all day long. And sometimes that is longer periods, but really for the most part, it's all these little tiny moments where I have 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I use those moments for conscious introspection. And I solve a lot of my problems, and I solve a lot of mysteries waiting in line, really do. You know, I really crack the case when I'm like at a Disneyland or something where I'm in line for like 2 hours, but these little moments to kind of help you cultivate your patience. Maybe I guess this is another bonus exercise. When you're feeling impatient, use the pause technique. The pause technique is very important, and it's really, really useful. In the book I just wrote, Mindfulness for Busy Lives, Everyday Mindfulness for Busy Lives, I talk a lot about the pause method because it's something that's really empowered my and I'm not a very patient person a lot of the times. I have a lot of things that annoy me. And I don't know why that is. That's what I'm using my moments of introspection for. Why are you so annoyed all the time? What's wrong with you? But I like to use the pause method a lot because I can sense when things are going to start spiraling out of control, and I just say, stop. stop, pause, especially when I'm feeling impatient. And I practice the old calming breath technique that I like to share a lot and help me refocus and go about my day. Like I said, I use these waiting periods for moments of
The best moments you can have when it comes to being patient are the moments you feel rushed the most. To ground yourself in mindfulness and breathing, like he's saying, breath work is one of the most powerful tools you can have in your arsenal, especially when you feel rushed or like you want something done right now. When those emotions are high, when that drive to control a situation, when you do that, you can ground yourself in your body and you can act from a place of clarity instead of from irrationality. I heard a beautiful quote recently on a podcast that was talking about anxiety and how, like, what's the difference between intuition and anxiety? When you have anxiety, you feel your heart racing. When anxiety is speaking to you, the best way to know if you should, the best thing you should do with what your anxiety tells you is the exact opposite.
Mhm.
It's been an interesting practice. I've been trying to play with this myself because anxiety lies to you because anxiety is trying to control things and get you to safety as quickly as possible. And often it's looking for any shortcut possible. And when you're operating from a place of anxiety all the time from survival mode, your anxiety is probably leading you down a lot of paths that aren't working out for you.
We often talk about unrealistic, unmet expectations. Impatients are often triggered by these things. Bad service. I should not have to wait in line this long. Or, what the heck? Learn how to drive, pal. Slowing me down. We need to learn to identify those triggers and reframe them as opportunities for growth.
Yes.
Everything is an opportunity for growth. Delays. Who's ever been to the airport and have been told 3 times that it's going to be another hour and a half, another hour, and then the next thing you know, the airport, they turn all the lights off. And you're like, oh my God, what happened?
Not just delays in that, but think about when you're getting ready in the morning and you're running behind and you're delayed there. Why? I'm
For
so
whatever
far
reason.
behind. Why am I doing this? I got up early. I should be ready and I should be out the door.
Well,
by
if you're
now.
me, it's because I'm on TikTok or
But
reading Facebook stuff.
I have learned that when I am facing a delay or a setback in when I'm supposed to be somewhere or something's supposed to happen on a certain time. Okay.
Mhm.
For instance, if I'm supposed to leave at 9 o'clock and I leave at 9:15, I'm delayed for some reason. There is usually an accident down the road that I just miss. If you have those, take your time and be patient. There's probably a reason.
Maybe be grateful.
Exactly.
And often you could have avoided an accident yourself. One thing I've tried to get in the practice of is everything happens for a reason.
Exactly.
I remember one day I was trying to get out of work early and I couldn't. There was just too much stuff going on, wound up staying late. And I get on the highway and it's backed up traffic and it took me an extra hour to get home. And then all of a sudden I find out there was this huge car pileup. And most likely I would have been in that if I would have left when I wanted to.
Yep.
Delays are a part of life in every aspect. They are also, if you choose them to be, opportunities for growth. Finding new ways around, finding new pathways, meeting new people. It could bring so much to your life if you just embrace them and understand that you actually have no control over them, most of them, like especially if you're like at an airport or something. You can use that time for other things. That's patience. Patience is not simply waiting, as we said. It's preparing. It's trusting and believing in the process. Even when we don't know what that process is, and many times we don't. When we embrace patience, we align ourselves with the natural rhythms of the force, of life, of wisdom. Through mindful practice, patience becomes not just a virtue, but a way of being.
Yeah.
We are going to leave that there. I know this is a long one, guys, and I hope you made it to the end. If you do, I give yourself another extra 20 points. So this is going to be probably at least a 3-part series. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your patience and your respect. And we love you like family. With love and gratitude, ad lucem.
Ad lucem.